Hey, what's going on, everybody? Two Fish here, and I just wanted to do a video follow up on the attempted Facebook Live post the other night. Two things surprised me about that Facebook Live post. One, the terrible bandwidth. Obviously, it was pixelated. You couldn't really understand much of anything. But also, the second thing that surprised me was some people actually watched and were actually interested in what I had to say. Sent me some messages and wanted me to actually, go over it in more detail. So that is my attempt here. Now, I did say the other night, and I will start out this little segment by saying fish are dumb. And we are the ones that tend to complicate things. So if I have a goal in any of these video series, it's to basically just let you know that you can simplify things. And I'm going to try to come across with some simple techniques, some techniques that you can find the baits in most stores, and some baits that you can use in a variety of ways. What I want to go over in this particular video are two techniques, and that is weightless and also a shaky head. I'm going over these two in particular because you can throw both of these techniques with the same gear. I use a medium heavy maximum fast action rod with a casting reel, 6-3-1 casting reel, 15-pound fluoro. I like to use pretty heavy line because I don't necessarily fish finesse techniques in a finesse fashion. But, you can interchange both these baits on that gear and throw them both successfully. So that's really one of the main reasons why I'm going over these two, together. The first thing I want to go over is weightless. And it goes back to the basics of fishing when we were young and we just were digging up worms and putting it on a hook. So that's basically all this is. It's a hook. This in particular is a 4-aught Gamakatsu, extra wide gap hook, one of the ones I prefer to use. And then a worm, just a worm. And it's so simple, it's almost too easy, but it is something that's very effective on damn near any body of water in any state. So I wanted to really go over this because if I was just getting into bass fishing, this would be the first thing I'd learn, I guess, is the reason why I'm going over it now. Now, there's two main ways you can fish this weightless technique. One way is wacky, and that is to take a 5 or 6 inch Cinco, Ocho, dinger, a stick worm of your preference. Dingers are fairly inexpensive. The Strike King shimmy sticks are fairly inexpensive. You can go on up to Ochos and Cincos. I tend to buy Cincos when they're on sale, but I do like using Cincos. So I'll show you a couple of those as well. Wacky rig, though, is simple. You take the worm and you find that middle spot of the worm. You see how it's hanging there kind of, both sides are pretty even. Take the hook it right through that middle. All right? And now you got both sides. Well, I missed, obviously. Got one hanging down a little further, but it's not that big of a deal. This technique can be used in a variety of fashions. It can be thrown up against a laydown. It can be thrown up against stumps, rocks, shoreline grass, mainly along the edges, but you can fish it in a ton of different ways. One good thing about this, using the hook the way I use it, is you can see that it's always going to ride like that. Okay, so it will tend to go over cover and rocks and whatever like that. So you don't get hung up as much as you would think. And it's a technique that will catch fish anywhere. All right, so I would start out, if I was working a shoreline, I would start out using this technique. Now, if I was coming upon some grass on the shoreline, something to where I saw some fish actually chasing bait up in the grass, I would switch this technique around to a Texas rig. Same hook, same line, same worm. Just rig it Texas rig. What this is going to do is give you a weedless technique, or weedless technique that you can now throw up in that shoreline grass. And you can throw up in that gnarly stuff to where you were afraid to get hung up with the wacky worm. Now, one thing I like to do with this is if I see those fish chasing that grass, those fish or the bait up in that grass, I will literally throw this bait onto the bank. And then I will jerk the hell out of it off of the bank into that grass, and I will just scoot it along the top of that grass until I get close to the edge. Then I'll kill it. that bait will just, it'll be almost a topwater technique. You'll be surprised how many blow-ups you get on it. But as soon as it gets on that at the edge of that grass and you kill it, that bait's just fluttering down. And a lot of times those fish cannot stand that, and they will absolutely crush it. So just make sure you're ready for the bite. A lot of times you're not going to feel the bite as much as you're going to see your line just swimming off. All right, just put pressure, set the hook, you're good to go. All right, so one hook, one line, a bunch of different ways you can actually rig it and fish it. Now you don't actually have to use a worm with this. You know, you can use different baits as well. If you wanted to use something like a fluke, I've got some flukes here somewhere. Oh, these are huge, so I wouldn't use it with that hook. But you can also use a fluke type bait. Same weightless technique, just put the fluke on there, Texas rig, throw it through the grass. You can also take that fluke and skip it up under docks, things like that. So it's a technique to where if I have a shoreline and I see laydowns and a stump and some dots coming up, I've got the entire thing covered with one worm and one hook. I will throw a wacky worm around the laydowns and stuff I won't get hung up on, try to get some bites that way. I'll throw the Texas rig up on the grass, up on the shore, along the grass lines, and skip it up under the docks and just let it flutter down. I mean, it's a slow technique, but man, you will get a lot of bites. All right? That simple. Hook, worm, don't try to complicate things. You really don't have to complicate it. Now, the next thing I'm going to go over is something I use to actually win quite a bit of money this year. And something I use, man, 12 months out of the year. I almost always have these two techniques out on, but especially this one, and that is a little shaky head. This is a spot remover, pro model, shaky head with a little screw lock. It's an 1/8 ounce. I tend to use an 1/8 ounce more than anything. I like the screw lock more than the push in because the screw lock will actually keep your bait on there a lot better. If you use that push-up model, man, the bait comes off almost every time, almost immediately. So prefer the screw lock for sure. There are a ton of shaky head hooks out there. Owner makes a good one. You know, they're VMC. There's so many out there. It can get overwhelming. I tend to use this one because it comes through rocks and I like the way it stands up, doesn't get hung up as bad. So I'm fairly loyal to a brand that I've had success with. Now, what I like to pair this up with is another little stick bait, much like the Ocho or Cinco I showed you with the wacky rig, but this time I'm going to go smaller. I'm going to go a little 3-inch or a 4-inch stick bait. I have quite a few 3-inch Cincos, little guys. I'll show you how to rig it. 4-inch Cincos. And I'm going to tell you, I bought all these at Dick's when they were 75% off. I paid like 82 cents a bag for the 3 inches and $1.24 for the 4 inches. So I'll try to find sales like that and stock up on baits that are normally quite a bit more expensive because I throw them a lot. Now, what I'm gonna usually start this out with is a 3-inch Cinco or Dinger. You can see it is a tiny bait, little bait, little hook. But you'd be surprised how many big fish this will actually catch. But it will also catch every fish that swims. All right. And the reason being is if you'll look around your kayak or your boat when you're fishing, you'll see the bait. Most of it's 3 inches or smaller. I mean, in very, very few of our reservoirs do we have the monster gizzard shad or threadfin shad. A lot of them are just a little bitty tiny shad or darter minnows or ghost minnows. Most of them are 3 inches or less. So this little thing right here, this little 3-inch bait, darting and jumping and bouncing around in the water, mimics most everything that swims. So you will get a lot of bites. I mean, a ton of bites. Now, the way I like to rig the 3-inch, you notice there's not a lot of meat there. All right. So I will actually just skin hook this one. Just go right inside just like that. Keep it straight. You want a straight profile. Okay. And with this hook, it's going to stand up just like that on the bottom. And it's going to hop along. All right. You can swim it. You can hop it. But what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to try to make it mimic those little minnows that I'm watching. I mean, watch them when you're out there, guys. Just pay attention to your surroundings. Those little minnows aren't doing the same thing over and over. And very rarely do you see them do this on the bottom, unless it's a freaking goby up north, and we don't have those down here. All right, what you're going to see is they're darting around and they'll go down and look at something, then they'll come back up. So you want to be a little erratic with this. Don't be consistent. Change your cadence up. Be crazy with it. Pop it on the bottom and then jerk it a couple times, sideways and make it dark. You think that a bass is looking at that bait at all times. And a bass is waiting for that right moment that bait reacts to, for it to eat it. That's what you're basically trying to do, okay? In my eyes, fish have two instincts. That is to eat or avoid getting eaten. So basically, you're trying to make this guy look like something that's trying to avoid getting eaten. All right, you can throw a little 3-inch like this. Like I said, I tend to start with this. If I notice the bait is a little bigger, I will go to a 4-inch, and you can notice that right here. But you use the same hook and just rig the 4-inch the same way. Now the 4-inch is thicker. So what I will do with that is I will go all the way through the bait and then skin hook it like that. All right, you can see how that bait is hooked. Okay, and that way you don't have a much meat to come through before the point of that hook gets in the fish. And I'm going to tell you, this is a small hook, okay? And it's shaped in a way that it doesn't have that extra wide gap like that wacky rig or that weightless rig I showed you. So you will lose some fish on this. So you got to fight them a little differently. Keep the fish under the water. I'm going to tell you right now, if the fish jumps, chances are you're going to lose it. And I know fish like to jump. So you're going to have to bury that rod tip in the water. You're going to have to fight it, keeping it down. Just try to keep the bait down or the fish down. You're going to land most of them. All right. So you can throw it with the 3-inch or 4-inch stick worm, but you can also change this thing up. You can throw it with so many things. You can throw it with the little zoom trick worm, a floating worm. That way when it's on the bottom, this thing is floating up and that little tail's jiggling like that, driving them crazy. This is a little Jean LaRue paddle tail worm. It's got a little paddle tail at the end. You see how much action it's got on it. So when it's down there shaking it, it really goes crazy. You can even put on a crawl. One of my favorite crawls is a zoom speed crawl. You can, and it looks like a crawfish in a defensive pose down there with its claws up about to, try to bite that bass that's following it. So you can change it up quite a bit on both of these. So it gives you two techniques that you can use a lot of your bait, a lot of different soft plastics on, and not have to constantly be re-rigging and not have to be overthinking things. I also tend to stick with colors that are pretty consistent. I mean, most everything you see in the water has some type of green in it. Most everything. So keep your baits around green a lot of the times. Green pumpkin, watermelon seed, some variation of that. All right, you can change it up, watermelon magic or green pumpkin magic or green pumpkin blue. I mean, there's a ton of them, but stick to that green pumpkin or that watermelon base. If you want to go a little darker, I would suggest Junebug. Junebug's probably one of my favorite colors. I almost don't even want to share it with you guys because Junebug is one of those old school colors that will get bit everywhere. It doesn't matter if it's clear water, dirty water. Junebug, for some reason, mimics something in that water, I guess a bluegill, that bass love. So I will throw a Junebug year-round, different types of conditions. I'll change it up and just to see if they're biting a darker color that day. The point of this, though, I hope that you guys can see, the point of both of these techniques are they're really simple to use. They're really easy to find. The Gamakatsu hooks and the little shaky heads, a lot of times you can even find at Walmart. The baits are pretty easy and pretty readily available. Now the 3-inch Senkos, I will tell you, a lot of places don't carry those. I tend to find have more success getting those at Dick's Sporting Goods. But needless to say, there's a ton of options out there for you to shop. Key is get you a few stick worms, get you a couple of hooks, and you can go out with the same rod, whether it be a spinning rod or like I throw a bait casting gear, and have quite a bit of success without taking a lot of gear and without trying to complicate things too much. I hope you guys are finding something in these videos that you like. I plan on doing more because I'm fairly shocked by the people that were interested. So I will do more in the future. If you can do me a favor, a huge favor, a little self-serving, but go down and hit subscribe and like, and that way you'll be notified when the next videos come up. And also, this means a lot to me if you guys can do this. Give some support to the people who not only support me, but support our trail like you wouldn't believe in our area, the North Texas area. Mariner Sales, Eris Chalmers there has done so much for us. Roy Hurst Jr. at KJ's Custom Lures, and Jacob Taylor at Clear Fork Custom Jigs. Also for me is Hobie Fishing. If you could go to these pages, give these guys a like, and see what they're all about. Maybe even visit the stores or give them some business. I would really appreciate it. But stay tuned. I will be coming up with more videos in the future. But for now, I really appreciate your time, and tight lines, everybody.